Hello, BookTube. It's day 4 of Maze for Magazines event. I'm coming to you with a different angle here because I'm going to read from this large tome. It's Leigh Hunt's London Journal. It was a short-lived publication from April the 2nd, 1834 to 1835, to the end of the year. It was published weekly for, as he printed here, price 3 halfpence, so 1.5 pence. It was published weekly, as I say, on Wednesdays. It was published in sort of similarity to the Chambers Edinburgh Journal that I was reading from for the last couple days. That was published weekly, and it was published on Saturdays. But that was originally, at this time, set in Edinburgh. And Leigh's journal sort of had a southern flavor to it. And it was consisted of an essay that he would do every week and set articles. Later they would do some fiction through it. And then in the second year it incorporated another journal for the last year. It was Leigh Hunt's London Journal and the printing machine for the last year, which then went up to 2 pence. Now, as I say, it was set articles. There were some stories at times. There was sort of social talk. It's pre-Victorian, so it's been considered, or it's been described as a journal or a periodical that gives you good insight into the literary and social periods of the time, in London especially. Leigh Hunt was a critic, essayist, and poet. He, prior to this, had at least one other periodical that he created, and he lived from 1784 to 1859. He was part of a circle with Charles Lamb and William Hazlitt, also essayists and critics. Leigh Hunt brought to sort of the public a number of well-known poets: John Keats, Percy Shelley, Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and a few others. Because he was sort of London-based, there had been a bit of contention between sort of the North, Edinburgh. Not so much with Chambers' Journal, I don't think, because I think he began writing for that a bit later. But there were other Edinburgh. There was Edinburgh's Blackwoods magazine, which there was contention between them and Leigh Hunt. And there was sort of a bit of a battle of the Blackwoods magazine didn't think highly of John Keats, Shelley, or any of the sort of Hunt's circle of essayists or poets, and vice versa a little bit. But as I say, it was a variety of things. But what I'm going to do is read a small little article about ghosts. There's quite a few ghosts sort of stories or reminiscences or true stories about ghosts throughout the publication. And this one is a short one called A Haunted House. And I will need my magnifying glass, so it's a little difficult to read, especially with the lower lights now, because I've had to turn the lights off behind me. So yeah, A Haunted House. And this is from, let me get the exact date here, yes. Wednesday, June 11th, 1834. It's number 11. And the price was, 3 halfpence. So, A Haunted House. In one of the baronial estates of the north, which have been uninhabited for years, there was heard at times such extraordinary noises as to confirm the opinion among the country people that the place was haunted. In the western tower, an old couple were permitted to live who had been in the service of their former lord, but so imbued were they with the superstitions of the country that they never went to bed without expecting to hear the cries of the disturbed spirits of the mansion, An old story was current that the heir apparent had been murdered by his uncle, that he might possess the castle, who, however, after enjoying it for a time, was so annoyed by the sounds in the castle that he retired with an uneasy conscience from the domain and died in France. Not many years ago, the property descended to a branch of the female line. One of the heroes of Waterloo, who, nothing daunted, was determined to make this castle his place of residence. As the noises were a subject of real terror to the tenantry, he formed the resolution of sleeping in the castle on the night he took possession, in order to do away with the superstitious fears. Not a habitable room could be found except the one occupied by the old gardener in the western turret, and he ordered his camp bed to be set up in that apartment. It was in the autumn, at nightfall, that he repaired to the gloomy abode, leaving his servant to his no small comfort at the village inn, and after having found everything comfortably provided, turned the large old rusty key upon the antiquated pair, who took leave of him to lodge at a farm hard by. It was one of those nights which are checkered with occasional gleams of moonshine and darkness, when the clouds are riding on a high wind. He slept well for the first 2 hours. He was then awakened by a low mournful sound that ran through the apartments. This warned him to be up and accoutred. He descended the turret stairs with a brilliant light, which, on coming to the ground floor, cast a gigantic shadow of himself upon the high embattled walls. Here he stood and listened, when presently a hollow moan ran through the long corridor and died away. This was followed by one of a higher key, a sort of scream, which directed his steps with more certainty to the spot. Pursuing the sounds, he found himself in the great hall of his ancestors, and vaulting upon the large oaken table, set down his lamp and folded his cloak about him, determined to wait the appearance of all that was terrible. The night, which had been stormy, became suddenly still, and the dark, fitting clouds had sunk below the horizon, and the moon insinuated her silvery light through the chinks of the mouldering pile. As our hero had spent the morning in the chase, Morpheus came unbidden, and he fell asleep upon the table. His dream was short, for close upon him issued forth the horrid groan. Amazed, he started up and sprang to the unseen voice, fixing with his powerful blow his Toledo steel at the arras. The blade was fast and held him to the spot. At this moment the moon shot a ray that illuminated the hall, and showed that behind the waving folds there lay the cause concealed. His sword was left, and in the turret retraced his steps. When morning came, a welcome crowd greeting asked him if he had met the ghost. "Oh, yes," he replied the knight. "Dead as a doornail behind the screen he lies, where my sword has pinned him fast. Bring the retching bar, and we'll haul the disturber out." With such a leader, and broad daylight to boot, the valiant throng tore down the screen where the sword was fixed, when lo, in the recesses lay the fragments of a chapel organ, and the square wooden trunks made for hallowed sounds were used as props to stay the work when the hall was coated around with oak. The wondering clowns now laughed aloud at a mysterious voice. It was the northern blast that found its way through the crannies of the wall to the groaning pipes which had alarmed the country round for a century past. I do apologize. It's very difficult to read with this. It's very difficult to read the small print anyway, unless I have a lot of light. But I do need that. But anyway, that ends the little haunted house, little ghost story. And it's an interesting periodical or a journal, because it's got books that are coming out. There's some book reviews, a treatise on the disease of the heart and great vessels, and this is published by William Kidd in Chandos Street, West Strand. Summer Rambles, Kids Picturesque, Pocket Companions to Marriage, Ramsgate. No, that's Margate in Ramsgate. Okay. I thought that seemed a little strange. Yeah. So, and it just, as I say, it just goes on. It's a facsimile. It was published by AMS Press in 1967, but originally, as I say, 1934, 1935, and I picked this up. I didn't know what to expect, and going back to buying stuff off of eBay, at the time there was the only one that was listed, and it was listed for £15, I think it was, or best offer, free shipping. So I put in, best offer of £10, and it was accepted. So I didn't know what to expect, to be honest, because the description was very poor. But as you can see, it's perfectly fine. It hasn't really been read, because as I'm leafing through the pages, they're still sort of stuck a little together at the top in places. So it's never been read. And I don't know how. It must weigh about 3 pounds or more. I have no idea how these people sell something for £10 and with free shipping. But I'm not arguing. As Steve Donahue has found out, occasionally you get something that is not described. Like, well, it's like his first foray into ordering off of eBay, and it's not as described, but he's happy with what he's got, and that's all that matters. And for this, I would have been happy for the £10. I think if it was even ex-library, I would have been a bit disappointed that they didn't describe it as such, but I would have easily paid £10 for it as an ex-library. I've never looked for it since, but I don't know. It was the only one that I could find at the time. So I am very pleased with it. And this May for magazines is actually quite helpful, because it's getting me to have a closer look at some of the books that I have here that I've picked up sort of willy-nilly over periodicals over time, and never really had a really close look at them. So I'm not sure if I'll read anything more from Leigh Hunt's London Journal, at least not for the moment, because it's a bit cumbersome. And we'll move on to something else. I think I've got something called the Everyman magazine that was done by Dent Publishers. It's the same name as the Everyman library, but it's not directly connected to it. There was another magazine that they put out that was directly related to the library, and I probably will try to read something from that as well. I've got them around here somewhere. They're very fragile, but we'll see what we can do. Anyway, take care, BookTube. I hope everybody's doing well. Bye.